Okay, welcome back to the teaching room for a quick session here on the sports psychologist couch as a lockdown lesson video. Something a bit different this time around. Hopefully, as I've said in the past, hopefully we're back next week and we won't need lockdown lesson videos. But I just thought I'd take this opportunity, really, this is really motivated by Collin Morikawa last week at the British Open. And I just want to quickly touch on two things that were really quite interesting with his win. The first one was the fact that the week before at the Scottish Open, he played really badly. Well, he made the cut, but he barely made the cut. And for those of you who don't know what that means, in a golf tournament, there's usually about 150 players that start. After 2 rounds, half of the field is cut, so they don't play on the weekend, and the other half play on the weekend. They're the ones that get paid. And if he had had 1 shot more after 2 rounds, he would have missed the cut. I'm pretty sure he made it right on the number. And then of those that made the cut, I'm pretty positive he finished in like 70th place. He was nearly last. And the reason for that was because his putting was really, really bad. He had a really poor performance on the greens for the 4 days. So much so that on the weekend, the commentators were almost cringing about how badly he was putting. And they were talking openly in the commentary about how he would possibly turn this around for the following week, the British Open. And he was barely able to get it in from 2 feet on some holes. It was really, really quite poor. Fast forward to the British Open, as we know, he putted fantastically. And the reason I mention this is that it's just interesting that someone like that can turn their putting around from one end of the spectrum to the other so quickly. The message I want to give to you is that sometimes that when you're doing something really, really badly, it demands a response. If he had putted the week before, sort of just average, or in some sort of just mediocre, he might have just thought, oh yeah, it'll be okay, and therefore he wouldn't have really addressed it, and he probably would have just putted the same way in the British Open, and then he wouldn't have won. But because it was so poor, it demanded a response, and he obviously, I haven't really been able to find what he actually did, but there has been talk that he did something in between that addressed the problem, and out of that came the really, really extraordinarily good putting performance at the British Open. But the point is that sometimes when you go really badly and it demands a response, that acts as a catalyst for good performance. So I just wanted to briefly touch on it because a lot of members do get sometimes, and I was guilty of this as much as anyone when I was playing, is that we tend to catastrophize a little bit about really bad performances. And that's usually because you think that therefore that means you're going to play that way the next day and the day after that. But the reality is that sometimes when you have those bad performances, it's something probably you should embrace, because it's like, okay, I can see where my faults are, and it drives you then to go and address those areas and fix them. And it can be, as I said, a catalyst for good performance. So it was quite interesting, and a lot of times we see pros particularly do this. They have a bad week, really bad week, and they come out and they win the next week. So a lot of members think that that pros don't have weeks like that. They don't have really bad weeks, right? But they do. They have bad rounds just like you do. But what this shows us is that don't be too worried about it. It can be a good thing for your golf to spur you on to something better. And the second thing I wanted to mention was those of you who watch the golf, the British Open, and they had the comment on the last few rounds, because he was leading, they had the microphones there quite close, and you could hear him with his caddy going through his visualization of the shots. And he was talking about every shot. He'd say to the caddy, look, okay, so I want to start it at that TV tower, and the wind's coming from the left, so it's going to start there, it's going to drift back in. And then they would agree, and they'd say, yep, that's what we want to do. And he did that on all his shots. You could hear him openly talking about how he was visualizing the shot. Now, a lot of members, when we talk about this, you would think to yourself, oh, well, he's an elite golfer, it's okay for pros and elite amateurs to think like that. I'm not really good enough to have that, I guess, almost like minutiae of thought and visualization. And look, you can make an argument, yes, you might not need to go into that much detail. However, what I want to talk about here today briefly is simply this, is that you can visualize, and often you probably do it without even knowing. And I would say that most of you, when you play really well, you are visualizing in a more simple way, but you are visualizing in that you look down the fairway, you say, I want the ball to go there, and in your mind, you are sort of imagining the ball going into that place. Now, when you play well, that's often how you think. When you play poorly, it's usually not how you think. When you play poorly, you might start off and you might start like that, I want it to go there, and then it doesn't go there. And on the next hole, same thing. And then what happens is, because you're hitting a few poor shots, your mental game drops off as well. So now you get on the tee, now you get to the third tee, you might be here at Sorrento, water's on the left, you've hit a couple of bad shots, and rather than get up there and sort of look where you want it to go, now because your mind's become a bit unsettled because of the bad shots you've hit, now you get up there and you're thinking about where you don't want it to go. So now you're thinking, oh gee, I haven't hit a very good shot so far, and I don't want the ball to go over there on the left, the water over there, and don't go there. And then that's the picture in your mind. And then you end up hitting it there. And then you come around a few more holes, you get to the sixth hole, you get up there, your mind's a little bit, clouded because you've got a few poor shots, and now you're thinking about where you don't want it to go, rather than where you do want it to go. So now you're thinking, I don't want to lose it to the right, the wind's coming from the left, I don't want to hit it down the hill on the sixth, and that's the dominant picture in your mind. Just to finish this off, what happens with your mind is that your mind works in pictures. So if the dominant picture in your mind is where you don't want the ball to go, your mind interprets that as, well, that's where he must want the ball to go. Now, that sounds a bit sort of silly in a way, but your subconscious mind assumes that you would be giving it pictures and giving it thought to where you want the ball to go, not where you don't want the ball to go. But what happens is when we're playing poorly or we're not quite right with our mind, we start to think about where we don't want it to go. All I'm saying here is that you don't need to be like Collin Morikawa and pick, fades and draws and all those sorts of things. All I'm saying is that make sure, whether you're playing well or whether you're playing badly, just make sure you get up on the tee or on the putting green or whatever, and just focus on where you want the ball to go. Don't think about where you don't want it to go, because the more you think about where you don't want it to go, there's a much bigger chance the ball will actually go in that place than there would be if you thought about where you do want the ball to go. And if you can remember at the times you played well, you will remember that when you play well, really all you're thinking about is where you want the ball to go. When you play poorly, most times you play poorly is because your thoughts are dominated by where you don't want the ball to go. So to take out two leaves out of Collin Morikawa's book, one is that because you play poorly one week, doesn't mean you're going to play poorly the next. And secondly, focus on where you want the ball to go, not where you don't want the ball to go. All right? I hope that makes sense. That's as far as we'll go with sports psychology today, but hopefully we'll be back next week. We look forward to seeing you all. Hopefully the weather gets a bit better and we're back to playing golf. Thanks for watching.